What's up, guys? Koma here. Today we are covering a brand new topic when it comes down to Splitgate. Splitgate's a lab, and that is scale. Not to be confused with the idea of your scaling tool. That is player scale compared to the map. So, for one, there are two major ways that you can measure scale. For one, that is the simulation block. So a great thing about the simulation block is that if you open the tools menu here, you can notice that this block is scaled one by one by one, which basically is 100 centimeters each by one unit. And basically, the scale is, I think, following the millimeters, I believe, or meters. I don't remember which one. I'll probably put a correct measurement up on screen. But when it comes down to scaling, Splitgate is usually scaled by threes. So as you can see, scaling out this cube, I now have three squares. And generally, this is kind of Splitgate's typical measurement. A lot of Splitgate 1 maps are scaled in threes, and or at least some of the newer Splitgate 1 maps are scaled in threes. And generally, the Splitgate 2 maps are scaled in threes, but realistically, it just depends on what level designer is designing it. So, when it comes down to, say, hallways or small platforms, you will generally probably want to scale to 6. And then if you're wanting to do a hallway, you're wanting to do 12. That's 13, so 12. This basically ensures that there is plenty of room for you to walk around on. And if you're going to make a slightly bigger room, then you might want 12. So 12 would be like two platforms that are kind of, connected via a hallway or a bridge. So something like this. And then you scale this down to 6. And then you connect both of them like that. So again, you can either run with 12s or you can do 9 instead. So it's not too much of a crazy um like area slash room. And then, of course, if you're going to do doorways, you can always just run with sixes as well. And then you can start building up the doorway around it. I'm going to have to set this to 50 because for whatever reason it's set down on the 50 grid. And you can bring it up at about 3 or so. And then, of course, you can cap off the roof. Now, it really depends on how easy and free you want your doorways to be. So, for example, this is a good height just to kind of, give them enough room, enough head height, and so on and so forth. But if you're really wanting to scale one-to-one to the player, you can instead go into the primitives and grab a sphere. Now, a sphere is really nice because you can do multiple things with it. For one, you could just make an absolutely massive ball if you wanted to. But what we are using it for is if you grab the Z axis and you scale it to 2 units, this is give or take kind of the size of the player. An alternative that is more harder to see is going into gameplay, objects, and grabbing a player spawn. So a player spawn is more similar to the player height. So if I were to do emote next to it, you'll notice the player height is relatively similar, but at the same time, this egg is relatively bigger. Now, it's worth noting that the camera height is around in the chest area of the player. So you'll notice that you're not feeling as high. You don't feel like your camera is up here. Your camera is like right around here. That is kind of typical with first-person shooters. But essentially, the way that I like to use this is that if it's 2, that means this is generally enough height, so I can do a you know hallway or something like that. So essentially, what happens is I can use some jetpack before hitting my head. Now, if I wanted to make it taller instead, I would instead make 3 high, and you can pretty much use your entire jetpack before falling down. Now, I believe 6, so this from the ground here up would be 6. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I believe this is the standard height for most takedown second levels. So most levels on takedown will always go blocks higher than the base floor. Essentially, this makes it to where sometimes you can't always make it. Um, and it kind of enforces you to take stairs or alternative portal routes. So, with a lot of this in mind, and taking in count player height and player size, we can now bring this over here. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it and bring it over to this other area that I've made over here. That kind of portrays player scale compared to an actual area. So I have another big door here that you can see that is like kind of meant for multiple players to flow through, as well as, some interesting ramps and a little bit of high ground. Now, I want to start with high ground because this is going to be very important for most people to learn. High ground should be balanced by thin layers or easy accessible areas. So, for example, when it comes down to high ground, I can't easily portal out. So I can't go there and just go here and portal out. Instead, I am really enforced to do this and turn around and go out. This is because when high ground is controlled, it is very strong. This is because basically you have enough room up here to essentially try and cover your waist, but the enemies are completely exposed. And essentially the reason why it's so thin is because I can't back up and I can't move out of line of sight. So say, for example, this entire thing here is lifted up and then this is pulled back a little bit more. I can engage high ground and then I can jump and back up further to completely cut off that line of sight. So essentially, high ground is meant to be your risk reward. It's risky being up there, but you're rewarded for strong positioning. Additionally, just having the portal wall up here means that, most people can counter whoever is up here as well. So if there's someone playing here, someone could portal there and catch them off guard if necessary. Additionally, scaling is just really good to keep in mind as, how big the player is compared to an environment. This is an okay scale. I don't think this is anything crazy. It's not something that I would probably, it's something I would probably touch up on. But essentially, this middle area here is, of course, our typical 12 by 12, and this now is 12 by 21, so that's still following the rules of 3. You got 5 by 10 here, so it's 10 wide because this block here is serving as some negative space. Negative space should only be used if you think areas are just too wide and too big. So this way you give some negative space to an area and allow players to play around that negative space, and it could either provide cover or some good segmentation needed for a map. Now, again, whatever you're scaling is totally up to you. It is whatever your intention is with the map. So if a map is meant to be thin and it's meant to be claustrophobic in certain places, that is intention. When it comes down to being open and in a room that feels like engagements are supposed to occur, that is also intention. It's just understanding your limits on how you want the player to feel in a specific area. So try not to make it too big, try not to make it too small. Other than that, those are the only tips that I can really give in terms of scale. So again, you can use the egg, so to speak, to help scale your maps a little bit better. And again, if you want to, you can just go ahead and grab a player start, and that's another good height. So, you can compare the player to specific heights. So I can drag a player start here, and you can notice 2 units. So it'll be 4, 6. So you can fly up 6 units, and so on and so forth. Now, when it comes down to scaling in terms of angles, for example, there are specific angles players cannot walk up. So specifically, if I scaled this to be perfectly 5 by 10 by 5, you'll notice that I can't walk up it. It's just something that I cannot walk up. This is because any angle that is greater or equal to or greater than 45, you cannot walk up. So if I reduce this down by 1 unit, I can walk up it. And of course, I can also slide down it too. So keep in mind to not make your ramps too steep, because if they are too steep, number one, you're going to have issues hitting portals when standing at the base of them. So, for example, if I were to take this portal wall and drag it over to here as a great example, if I stand at the base of this ramp, you can see I can see it all right. This I can at least hit the center of this portal, as well as if I'm back here, I can also see the center of this portal. But if this ramp was any higher, so if I did follow the rules of 3 still here, it would probably change this portal line of sight from here completely different. You can see that I can only see the top of this portal. I could still hit it, but for player convenience, that is going to be very difficult, especially when, depending on where you can hit that portal. Now, if I'm back further, that's fine. There's no issue there. But ensure that your ramps are never too steep and they are easy and smooth to hit. So that pretty much wraps up everything to do with scaling. I hope you guys found some useful information here, albeit it's a very short and more of a simple way of looking at some more level design aspects. And I will have probably another video sometime. I don't know whenever my next video will be, but we'll probably cover segmentation um, sometime soon, as that is something that I just mentioned. And yeah, so I'll catch you guys next time. And if you guys found this video informative or helpful or whatever, you can like, share, and subscribe if you want to come back for more. Ring the bell. And I guess I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Adios.